All right, so in our last lesson, we started talking about the freedom of religion and how it has two parts. So, the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. So, we talked about the case of Engel v. Vitale that deals with the Establishment Clause. So, today we're going to look at Wisconsin v. Yoder, which is another required case for the AP exam, and it pertains to the Free Exercise Clause. So, this takes place in 1972 when Jonas Yoder and Wallace Miller, who are members of the Old Order Amish, and Aidan Yetzi, a member of the conservative Amish Mennonite Church, are going to challenge Wisconsin's school attendance law. So, this law is going to require children to attend public or private school until the age of 16. So, Yoder, Miller, and Yetzi, who are parents, are going to argue that the law violated their rights under the Free Exercise Clause because it went against the Amish religion and way of life. So the Amish are going to argue that education beyond early teen years, so around 8th grade, was a violation of their religious beliefs because their religious practice is going to require that children stop receiving that formal education like that in a public or private school and start learning the skills and values that they would need within their Amish community. So if you know anything about the Amish religion, you know that their lifestyle is very different than the one that we practice. Okay, so it is very simple living, plain dress, little to no electronic use. So it is very different than the lifestyle of people who do not practice the Amish religion. So the question in this case is, does Wisconsin's requirement violate the First Amendment by criminalizing parents who refuse to send their children to school for those religious reasons? So in this case, the court is going to rule that individuals' interests in the free exercise of religion are going to outweigh the state's interests in compelling school attendance beyond 8th grade. So it violates that free exercise clause because the state can't show an interest of the highest order, which could not be achieved in another way. So that means that 1 or 2 years of high school is not going to produce the benefits of public education that are cited by Wisconsin. So the Amish are going to be able to freely practice their religion. The state cannot compel those students to attend school beyond 8th grade or to that age of 16. All right, so this is another case. It's not required, but it is also going to deal with the free exercise clause. It's just more recent. So this is Burwell v. Hobby Lobby from 2014. So the Green family, who are owners of Hobby Lobby, organized the business around the principles of Christian faith. So we have a Hobby Lobby here in Somerset. We know that it is closed on Sundays and has expressed the desire to run the company according to biblical precepts, one of which is the belief that the use of contraception, so birth control, is immoral. So under the Affordable Care Act, which we've already discussed, employment-based health care plans must provide certain types of preventative care, such as FDA-approved contraceptives. So the Greens are going to challenge this requirement, arguing that the plan covering contraception is going to violate that free exercise clause and Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. So they are challenging this act or this requirement because of the free exercise clause. So they are arguing that because of their religion, they should not be required to provide contraception. So the court is going to hold that because the contraception requirement is going to force religious corporations to fund what they consider abortions, or they would have to face significant fines, it's going to create a substantial burden that is not the least restrictive method for satisfying government interests. So again, in this case, Hobby Lobby is going to win because of the free exercise clause. So they have the right to not provide that contraception because it goes against their religious beliefs. All right, so moving on to freedom of expression or freedom of speech. So we're going to start talking about some of the freedom of speech cases. So freedom of expression is defined as a fundamental right that is affirmed in the First Amendment to speak, publish, and protest. So when it comes to freedom of speech, there are a few different types of speech. So there is pure speech, which is verbal, and that is the most common form, so actually saying something. Speech plus, which is verbal and symbolic speech together, such as rallying and picketing. So you're at a rally or at a protest or something like that, and you are not just rallying, but you're also picketing with signs. And then symbolic speech, which is using actions and symbols to convey an idea rather than words. So let's get into our first freedom of speech case. This is Tinker v. Des Moines from 1969, and this is one of your required cases for the AP exam. So on December 16th, 1965, John and Mary Beth Tinker and Christopher Eckert are going to wear armbands to school to protest the Vietnam War. So they're wearing these armbands as shown in the picture right here to protest the Vietnam War. So this is in their public school system. So administrators within the school are going to learn about that plan and are going to then create a policy that any student wearing an armband would be asked to remove, and refusal to remove is going to result in suspension. So this is a question of, do freedom of speech protections apply to students in public schools? And is wearing that black armband considered speech within the meaning of the First Amendment? So before the court rules, all 3 students are going to be suspended and did not return to school until after New Year's Day. So they make this plan right before Christmas, and they're not allowed to go back to school until after that. So their parents are going to sue the school district for violating the students' right to expression. So again, here are the armbands that they were wearing to school. So, does the prohibition against the wearing of armbands in a public school as a form of symbolic protest violate the students' freedom of speech protections guaranteed by the First Amendment? So, does wearing those armbands and then getting suspended for it violate their First Amendment rights within a public school? So, the court is going to rule that the First Amendment protects student speech and that wearing those armbands are a form of speech. So they rule that the armbands represented pure speech that is entirely separate from the actions or the conduct of those participating in it. So they aren't actually doing anything to cause problems aside from wearing those armbands. So the court says that the school must be able to prove that the prohibition was justified by more than a desire to avoid discomfort and unpleasantness. Okay, so the fear of kids, talking about them wearing armbands, and it just being an all-around issue that they have to deal with when they do it. So the dissent is going to argue that the First Amendment doesn't give the right to express any opinion at any time. The armbands distracted students from their work, so the school was within its right to discipline. So very likely when these kids come in wearing these armbands, when a rule has been made against them, other students are going to be distracted by it. So the dissent is going to say that the school is within its rights. However, the court is still going to set that precedent that free speech rights apply to public schools and students have the right to free expression, so long as it does not substantially interfere with school discipline. All right, so now we're going to look at another case that is a little bit of the opposite of Tinker v. Des Moines. Okay, it is going to be an example of how student speech can be limited in public schools. So this is Morse v. Frederick from 2007. So at a school supervised event, okay, and it's actually going to be as the Olympic torch is carried through their city, okay, Joseph Frederick is going to hold up a banner, as seen here, that says "Bong hits for Jesus." So the principal of that public school, Deborah Morse, is going to take away that banner and suspended Morse for 10 days. And she's going to justify her actions by citing that the school's policy against the display of material that promotes the use of illegal drugs. Frederick, in turn, is going to sue, alleging that this suspension is going to be a violation of his First Amendment right to freedom of speech. However, the court is not going to rule in his favor. It's going to instead say that school officials can prohibit students from displaying messages that promote illegal drug use. So even though students have some right to political speech in school, for example, that situation that happened in Tinker v. Des Moines, this right does not extend to pro-drug messages that may undermine the school's important mission to discourage drug use. So the court is going to hold that schools can restrict student speech that substantially interferes with the school's educational mission. All right, and that is where we are going to stop with this video.